All right, we're live. We're going to turn tonight over, well, we're here just to discuss the learning, our technology plan. And I'll turn it over, I guess, to Superintendent Lansfeld, who I'm sure will just turn it over to John, but.
Okay, thank you, Chair Sherman and Board Directors. And yes, I am going to turn the time over to Director John Perry.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here, Board Directors, Chair Sherman, Superintendent. I'm here tonight to go over our Educational Technology Learning Plan. This plan, it says in front of you 2023 through 2025. Those are the school years, so that starts in July 1st of 2022, coming up in a couple months here. We have had a technology plan like this in the district for 6 years now, and so this will be the third, if you will, evolution of our technology plan in the district to talk about where we're going. I wanted to start by really touching base on the learning technology vision. What are we trying to accomplish with technology in our school district? And so I'm going to read a little bit here, but this is the vision that we established in the plan. The plan, I should mention, came together with the work of about 20 of our educators, teachers, principals, folks in the classroom, and around the district. So students and teachers can access their educational resources at any time from anywhere. Learning environments have standard-defined resources that staff and students have been trained to use. Parents can easily access information on grades, attendance, assignments, and communicate freely with their children's teachers. Students and teachers use common devices to access standard technology-enabled learning resources. Students learn and succeed in mixed-mode environments where they have access to other students, teachers, and a web of knowledge and resources. Learning is neither restricted to the classroom nor the internet, and users can shift fluidly to ensure no barriers to learning exist due to weather, illness, or scheduled conflict, This is the driving premise of our technology plan, that there are no barriers between kids and their learning, and that technology is a tool that we can exploit to close that gap, whether there's distance between the student and the classroom, or even if you have students in the classroom that may need other tools available to them throughout the day. Technology provides a lot of avenues for personalizing a student's education or for providing students with individual resources that might be identified to help them with their individual challenges or struggles. And so we use this graphic here because to create an anytime, anywhere learning environment takes 4 supporting items. So that's creating a safe and secure environment, especially with the state of the internet these days. Making sure that all of that technology is fully supported. And so that is from the educational lens as well as the technical support area. Creating unified experiences, which is largely about the student having an online identity associated with the district so that online learning tools know who they are and know what teachers they're associated with. And then that regular and reliable access that largely connects back to funding and making sure that our technologies don't become outdated or unsupportable. And so digging into these items a little bit more here. Again, regular and reliable is about the availability of devices, about having working technology. We know that if teachers don't have access to working technology, or if they bring technology into their classroom and they are underprepared to utilize it, or the technology doesn't work as described, they are much less likely to engage in using that technology in the future. So making sure that that support is there, that it works as intended, that it's being maintained and replaced. So digging in a little bit more here to fully supported. So there's the core tech support, but there's also instructional technology support. So that would be more, how do we use Schoology? How do we use Seesaw? How are we adopting common learning platforms across our learning systems so that students and teachers and parents all have a similar experience? And then most recently, we've added family help to this to make sure that mom and dad can get connected at home and actually get into the same learning resources that their students are using to see what's going on in the classroom through technology. The unified experience, so that one login, but it also reduces the number of vendors that we're using. We've taken a lot of strides, and I'm gonna touch on this later in the presentation, to have fewer vendors and reduce some of that information sharing. And then also our integrated learning systems. So in any organization, and especially in education, there's a lot of different systems that we use. And if they're not exchanging the right information, And I say the right information because we don't want to overshare information, but we also want to make sure that the information necessary to the success of the academics is present. And then safe and secure learning. So there's a lot more attention going in this direction nationally and specifically here in Stillwater. And so I want to emphasize that I'm calling out a few items here because they're areas of initiative in this plan, but this is in no way limits the amount of work that we're doing to create these safe and secure environments. So we're increasing our cyber safety training specifically for staff. We already do quite a bit with students, but we need to do more with staff. We're adding layers of encryption to our systems. So like currently we only encrypt our mobile systems, mainly in case of theft, but we're adding more encryption layers on the back end of our system. We're adding additional backup and recovery points to what we currently do. Largely that's because when districts or any organization gets hit with some kind of a crypto locker that gets past all of their security, you've got to have some place to go to that is incorruptible. And that's how you can get your systems back without having to pay a ransom. And then endpoint protection is something you might be hearing more about. It's really the next evolution of antivirus protection. If you just click on it for me, yeah, thank you. So I said I was going to talk a little bit more about our integrated systems approach. So this is not an extensive listing of all of the systems that we have in the district, but it is a number of the core systems. And if I focus for a minute on that circle in the middle, those are really important systems. The PowerSchool SIS, Schoology, Performance Matters, which does our assessments, and Who Knew It or Unified Insights. And those systems in the PowerSchool suite hold a lot of sensitive student data. So it's an area where we have to provide more security than other areas. And in our previous environment, that would represent 4 or 5 different databases, different companies, different copies of all of that student data. And so by bringing that under the PowerSchool suite, one of the things we've been able to do is reduce the amount of data sharing of some of our most sensitive data. On the left side of that diagram, you see some of our higher level integrations. And these are areas where we do need to share more data for systems like School Cafe, where we process lunch applications, or Versatrans, where we do bus routing. School Pass does things like visitor management and attendance submittals. And then School Messenger, where in order to communicate with families, we not only need all that contact information, but we often need some of the data around which we are communicating, whether that has to do with communicating logins to families or lunch codes or things of that nature. And so we need to be mindful of the security and the agreements that we have with those companies in order to keep our data sharing secure. On the right side, we still need to be mindful, but these are what we consider rostered applications, and there's a lot of them. These are some of the more common ones that people are aware of and use. With rostered applications, we're sending student names, their login ID, and their teacher. And that's so that when a student logs into an application like Seesaw knows who the students are in the class. So when the student logs in, they can see their teacher. When the teacher logs in, they can see their students. Beyond that, there's no reason to provide additional data sharing to those systems, and so we don't. Some of the benefits of integrated systems is creating that one login for all users. There's some challenges on the parent side there I'm gonna touch on later, but it's also something we're working on. In terms of ease of use, PowerSchool is now becoming the hub. So we've always tried to provide some kind of a parent portal or parent landing place where parents can go to get access to all their different resources. And we're doing a lot of work to try and wrap all of that directly into PowerSchool or to make PowerSchool the launching point for those applications. So an example of that would be Smart School K-12. So parents that need to make payments now go to PowerSchool, and that's how they access Smart School K-12 in order to make payments for sports or anything else. We're really looking at how we can do more to integrate the lunch system and the transportation system into that as well. It validates all modes of learning. So Some students are reading a book, some students are doing a worksheet, some students are doing things on the computer. Technology is another mode of learning that's not better than or more important than other modes, but it does provide alternatives. And then students, of course, are always connected to their classroom through platforms like Schoology and Seesaw. In terms of data security, just to reiterate, fewer systems means less data sharing. We're going to be doing a lot in terms of providing more security to our systems. I think it's an area we need to look at more. We're actually working regionally to improve some of the agreements that we have with companies in Minnesota. But by lessening our data systems, that naturally improves data security just by limiting that sharing. We recently implemented Google two-factor authentication for all staff, and we'll be looking to expand that option to parents probably in the next year. And then we're adding more device-based filtering protection. So there's a lot we do in terms of virus protection, web-based protection, and really preventing Chromebooks and devices from going places that they shouldn't be. Part of the benefit of that is that protection can integrate with systems like Schoology, so we can guide students to places they should be and protect them from going places they shouldn't. So vision-wise, when you put all this together, it's what I like to describe as light switch technology. And the analogy I like to give is when you walk into a classroom to observe the learning, nobody notices that the lights are on. It's just expected. Kids are in a classroom with lights learning. You're gonna look at student behavior, you're gonna look at teacher behavior, et cetera. That's what we want to deliver with technology. So students should have Chromebooks, they can go into Schoology, they can get assignments, they can turn assignments in. If it's working the way we want it to work, it should appear unremarkable. It should be like a light switch. It shouldn't be the thing that takes the notice, because the learning is the thing that we want to notice, not the technology. We asked Caleb to speak a little bit to our Schoology initiatives here.
Yeah, so, by giving access to kids to devices and through this unified, integrated approach of our systems, we're able to provide a comprehensive system to our students to align that learning workflow. So within Schoology, teachers are able to post assignments using Google as well. We'll talk on the next slide as well about how Google integrates with these systems. And so students are able to create in Google, submit through Schoology, posting assignments, posting digitized content, making sure that students who might be missing are able to access the learning that they would have missed otherwise. Or certainly, as we've learned, right, in a pandemic, being able to adjust and to provide materials to kids as needed. So Schoology provides that opportunity. We're also able to have students take assessments within Schoology, use rubrics within Schoology, aligned to state standards to provide progress reports, mastery reports around the standards, pass back and forth with our other systems, which we'll highlight later as well. Schoology also provides avenues for two-way communications between teachers and parents, between students and teachers, but then also between students and each other, utilizing some of the different features within Schoology. The plan for rolling out this experience is to utilize Schoology and expand it to grades 3 through 12 by 2025. So starting in 2023, starting with 5th grade, then the following year in 4th grade for 2024, and then 3rd graders in 2025. So that, again, we have a unified comprehensive system that allows students to be able to grow those skills over time, allows for sequencing of the various features within Schoology, and to deepen student skills and use over time. One of the features that I'm kind of excited about, I think we are, within Schoology is the ability to annotate text. I think it was 10 years ago I was first introduced to Schoology, and that was the one of the features that teachers were desperately seeking. They wanted to be able to post a reading article and have kids notate right on that digitized text. I don't know that we had touch screen technology on Chromebooks at the time, but iPads certainly could. And so we had to do a lot of app smashing, using different apps to do multiple functions, and then has to be submitted to the teacher. So within Schoology, we're able to post a reading assignment, we're able to post a worksheet or an activity that kids using a touch screen are able to annotate directly and submit as part of that process, really streamlining that learning experience and the teaching experience. So that unified, integrated student experience is the same thing we want for our teachers. So recognizing, the Power School, Schoology, Performance Matters, and Google integrations, these systems talk to each other. We can take attendance in one system and see it in the other. Students can take an assessment in Schoology, and that will directly be able to be reported and in Performance Matters, allowing us to look at data from across a range of assessments to see how an individual student is doing, to really tell a much fuller story using multiple data points from multiple sources than what we may have traditionally been able to do. We're able to utilize, again, that communication linkages between Schoology and Power School and again, just that two-way communication piece.
So when teachers log into our systems now, this is what they see. This is an example of a teacher login. And so in this effort that we've had to unify our systems, and we talk about all that systems integration work we've discussed here for many years now, this is the culmination of that. So a teacher logs into Schoology and they have access to all their classes and all their kids, but there's other things that teachers need to access. So they need to access Performance Matters for those assessments, student information system directly to get access to parent contact information and other details about their students. The records management actually has to do with the teacher's own evaluations. Unified Insights does more reporting. Then they have the Schoology platform and their gradebook access in PowerSchool through Power Teacher Pro. And so this is the one login for teachers where everything is under that roof. When we get to the parent experience, this is where things always get more complicated. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there are just more apps that our parents need access to, and it's very difficult to convince these companies to work cooperatively together. They often have components of their software that compete with one another. That said, we are quite determined to overcome those barriers, and we'll continue to try and create as unified of an experience as we can for parents. What you're looking at is whether something is accessible on the web or through an app. And so what that boils down to for the most part is that parents need to install multiple apps. Currently, they can use the same PowerSchool login that they have with Schoology, but we still have some work to do to get that login to work with School Cafe and School Pass. And the transportation system is also a separate system. So that is actually one of the I would say, headline goals of the tech plan, but it's also one of the most challenging things because we can't do it on our own. We need vendors to work with us to make that experience more palatable for parents. So in terms of those key goals and benchmarks, I made a note for myself. I think we have 16 goals and a little over 80 benchmarks in the technology plan. Hope you had a chance to read through it. It's a little bit thick. There's a lot that we're planning on accomplishing in the next 3 years. I did want to highlight certain pieces which I think are areas of interest that folks are going to want to know about. And so I called these out specifically here. And the first there is increased dedicated support for teachers and students. So that has to do with hiring tech support as well as that curricular support. Expand online training options for staff. We're going to be working with some of our staff and actually moving or changing the responsibilities of some of our staff this year to focus on building that library of training support for teachers. So when they're in a component of one of our systems and say, how do I do this with grading? How do I do this with parent communication? There's a little tutorial to help them through it. So they have the in-person support they can ask for, but there's also more of that self-help portal online. Create standard data reports to track academic progress. So this relates to things like read well by 3rd grade, high school graduation. We purchased the Unified Insights program. We are about halfway through its implementation right now. And the goal of that is that we're going to be able to track with much more accuracy where we are academically succeeding with our students and where our challenges are so that we can direct resources to the correct places in the district. establish regular replacement cycles for all technology. I would be remiss if I didn't cover this. You guys have heard me talk about this for many years now. Technology requires a regular replacement cycle, which is expensive. And we have the technology levy in place now, and so we are establishing those replacement cycles that we've needed for so long, and we're gonna benefit greatly from that technology levy in that area. Expand single sign-on access for parents. That's what we were just talking about. We need to continue to tie systems into that single sign-on for parents so they don't have 5 accounts for 5 different systems. Expand Schoology implementation in grades 3 through 5. As Caleb was speaking about, there is an elementary experience available for Schoology now, which changes the menus and kind of makes the platform more appropriate for our elementary age kids. And with the Chromebook tool in place, having that common experience as the platform ages up with the kids is gonna create a very good experience for our families and for our kids that are using technology in their learning environments. Develop a standard process for evaluating technology-based learning platforms. This is big. Schools use dozens of online learning platforms. The district doesn't adopt dozens. We might adopt 20 or so, but any teacher in any classroom finds different resources that help them with their instruction, and they grab those. But we need to formalize processes for how we look at these different technology resources. How do we evaluate their security? How do we approve their utilization? And so part of the plan has to do spending the next year, I believe in the first year of the plan, really focusing on what are those processes for evaluating and adopting different software programs so that we know that we're adopting things that meet our academic requirements and our safe and secure learning environment requirements. And then number 8 there, increase data security. This is going to continue to grow. Schools are targeted for, and government in general, for not spending enough time and attention and dollars on security. And so we're really working to increase that area so that we don't have any kind of a data breach. So that's a quick run through of the whole technology plan. I want to encourage folks that have an interest to go online, and the link is there. You can download the whole plan today. In it, you'll find an executive summary that really talks about where we've been before, during the pandemic, and today as we move forward into next year. There's the learning technology vision we covered at the beginning. There's a page in there I really like. It's pretty simple. It's called the Classroom Standard, as we just talk about what a standard classroom in Stillwater area public schools should have access to technology-wise. All the goals and benchmarks are in there, and then at the back you'll find a sample levy budget. So there's always a lot of talk about, well, what are they doing with the levy dollars? This is really meant as a point of transparency to show people this is where those dollars go, so people can see exactly how we're intending to spend that money. I say sample because every budget year is different than the year before it, and so in general there's categories in there, and you'll see this is the money that's being spent on infrastructure. You can swap out infrastructure projects, but each year there's a different infrastructure project, and so by and large it's going to be a pretty accurate telling of where that money gets spent. Moving on from that, one of the biggest components of that tech levy, of that budget, and of the plan moving forward is our universal access one-to-one program. And so what that looks like for Stillwater schools rolling out next year, and I want to emphasize that this is something that we are going to grow into. And so where we are in year 1 is not going to, we will make progress over the first 3 years and the next 3 years. And there's a lot of components to that. We talk about earlier as we evaluate what those learning supports look like in technology. That work is going to be happening during the rollout and over that time. So there's some time that the program needs to mature here. And so right there in the first piece, you see grades K1 using iPads in a 2-to-1 environment. When we reached out to teachers and asked our K1 teachers specifically what they needed in this regard, and they said it would be great if they could just have 2-to-1 iPads. These are largely used for Seesaw, and in their usage, students are split up into what's called a workshop model, where different kids in the classroom are doing different things. And so going into the first day of school or the first semester of this program, there wasn't a lot of appetite for one-to-one. But at the same time, we shared with teachers, that doesn't mean that we can't grow this to 1-to-1. So today we have about a 3-to-1 average. So under this program, we're gonna grow to 2-to-1. And as we know when and where it makes sense to apply technology, if 1-to-1 is what makes sense in K1, we can move that direction. There's nothing stopping us, but that's not gonna be where we go this fall. Grades 2 through 5, so this is a basic clamshell Chromebook. We spent a little over $1 million, I believe, on Chromebooks during the pandemic. A lot of that through federal government dollars to help supplement our devices. And so we're taking those devices and applying them to 3.5. This will support the Schoology rollout in 2.5. And then at some point, I imagine elementary is going to be more interested in the more advanced devices that we're talking about for 6-12. But we want to make use of that financial resource that's been assigned to us. We also want to give those classrooms a chance to grow into that Schoology environment. And then the demand for those more advanced features is also going to develop. And so that's where at the end of the first 3 years, we'll probably be looking at an upgrade to that technology as the clamshell devices age out. In grades 6 through 12, we're looking at what was approved by the board. It is an 11-inch tablet with an optional digitizer pen. That pen is really important, like Caleb was talking about earlier. Now that Schoology is rolling out its annotation feature, this becomes a really important piece as we work towards that light switch technology, where I get in Schoology, there's my worksheet, do the math worksheet, and turn it in. Just as valid as grabbing the worksheet off the teacher's desk, doing that with a pencil or pen at home and turning it in, or copying something out of a textbook. It's meant to support those multiple modes of instruction, and specifically help out students that may have forgotten their homework on their way home, or otherwise need that more advanced features. Now, I want to emphasize a little bit with these 6-12. So this is where we have Project Lead the Way, we have Design and Make, we do a lot of 3D modeling, and we've been hitting kind of the ceiling on our current Chromebooks and what they can do processor-wise, memory-wise, and storage-wise. And so these Chromebooks are an upgrade to what we've had in the past. And that's a recognition of the advanced work that our kids start doing in 6th grade, which I'm sure, I know you guys have heard presentations from Design and Make and Project Lead the Way. I know everybody thinks their kids are the most brilliant, but I assure you, our kids are the most brilliant. And so I think that this tablet is gonna go a long way towards really meeting those needs. The plan right now, these were purchased on a 3-year lease. And so we will own these devices at the end of that 3 years and shift them down to those grades 2 through 5. So then that'll be a good transition so that that additional feature set can be provided to elementary school. They are licensed and supported through 2029. So a 6-year utilization plan is a long utilization plan for Chromebooks, but in this case, I think it's practical. That said, we will have an opportunity after 3 years to evaluate the success of the program and determine if that's not a successful model, then we can look at moving to a different technology on something like a 4-year lease, which was honestly our original consideration, and not change what our annual assigned budget for this program is, but it would change the technology that we assign to it. So that 3-year time piece is gonna be really important for us in being able to reevaluate our successes. Coming up this fall, these devices will be assigned to all students throughout the district, but that's gonna look different throughout the district. So with our K1 students, these devices are gonna live in the classroom. And at this point, there isn't a whole lot to consider in terms of them going home. There's been some conversations about those e-learning days. What if we have inclement weather? We declare, we run out of snow days, whatever that looks like. Usually in your K1 learning, you have readers that go home and worksheets that go home. There's not a lot that really needs to be on the technology. In 2 through 5, these are largely gonna live in the classroom. And my guess is that the 2nd grade will live maybe exclusively in the classroom, and by 5th grade, you have kids taking the devices at specific times for specific purposes that's been pre-communicated to parents. This week, your child's taking home their Chromebook, they're working on the such and such project, so all that communication is out there, and there'll be that gradient between 2nd and 5th grade. But the home for those Chromebooks is gonna be in the classroom in a cart. In grades 6 through 12, the devices will be assigned to students. And so they will be in backpacks, they will go home, they will be moving back and forth between school. The expectation will be that they are moving back and forth between school. I want to emphasize that our evaluation for the Chromebooks, we expect quite a bit out of them in terms of their durability. These are tough devices. I don't want to encourage anybody at home to test that, but we have. We've done drop tests and all kinds of crazy stuff to them. We've already done repairs to see what it's going to take to get in, how long does it take, how expensive are parts, et cetera. And so we'll be putting cases on them and sending them home, and we're very confident in their survivability with students. That said, there's an expectation that they're cared for properly and that families are taking responsibility for their devices for a Chromebook the same way families take responsibility for textbooks and everything else that we send home. To that end, we are attempting to operate a low or no fee program. So what you'll find across the country is a range of programs. Some of those programs, you pick up your device and the school is immediately going to ask you to buy insurance. Okay? We are not doing that. Our families have already supported this program through their taxes. And so what we are asking for is a signature on the form that recognizes the responsibility for the device. We will be including instructions on how to care for the device that has smart tips in it, like not keeping it on a bed or under blankets or clothing, not using the device with food and water around it, and a lot of practical stuff that we're going to remind families and students and encourage folks to follow the rules on that. Yeah.
That being said, does the district carry insurance on all these devices?
So what I would describe is more of a self-insurance model. So no. At this quantity, the insurance gets really expensive. And so what we do is we overpurchase by about 8%. And so we have an additional number of devices in our fleet that allows us to do swaps and repairs and keep us in operation without having to incur the expense of insurance. The fee schedule here is largely set up to encourage better behavior. So the first time and second time there's accidental damage, it's a $50 cost to repair the device. The third time, it's $50, and we're looking at losing Chromebook privileges. This is where we really include our administration. What's going on here? Why are we having so much damage? What needs to change in order for this situation to become workable? Anything over the third incident or anything that's intentional, families will be expected to pay for the actual cost of repair up to the value of the Chromebook. Similarly with loss or theft, recognizing with theft, there may be mitigating circumstances. You know, if a child's keeping their Chromebook at school in their school locker and lockers at school get broken into, that may be a mitigating circumstance, you know, where we say that's really not our kid's fault. And so administration will have the ability to leverage some oversight of that. In terms of that up to $400, our Chromebooks cost just over $400 delivered. And what we're saying is that these are $400 devices, and every year we're going to reduce the value. We're going to depreciate them by 1/6. So we expect our devices to be in use for 6 years. And so if you've had a device for 3 years and it gets stolen, we're not going to charge you for a brand new device. We're going to charge you for the loss of a 3-year-old device, which has a depreciated value. And then we list our minimum value there at $40. As long as the device is still under Google support and expected to be usable. So in that 6th year, it generally goes down to the 40, and that becomes the minimum. And then there's costs there for power cable replacement, protective case replacements, or to purchase the pencil that digitizes it. Lastly, we're going to continue our family support line. This is available to families for login support, help with access to Schoology, or support with form submission, as we often get a lot of calls for things like helping with conference signups. And this fall, we're going to be doing a little bit of experimenting with this position. So we want to make sure that there's some after-hours family support, but we're not trying to operate a 24/7 call center. And so I'm not ready to say exactly what it's going to look like, but we've talked about like maybe we'll have some evening hours on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and figure out when are the calls most likely to come in and how can we provide that coverage. We have somebody to help us with that through the family support line, but we also need that person here in the day. So we're going to try and do that balancing act, and we'll publish hours online so people can see when that's available. And so, why one-to-one technology? And this is just kind of our closing slide here, but just to remind people that, there's a lot of questions that come out about this. And, well, I have a computer, shouldn't I just use my own? And different things. And the truth is that when we're trying to operate in the education environment, we hear a lot of this from teachers, they need students on the same technology. They need to be able to have a common expectation across all students. We have incidents around things like testing where students have to be on a school device so that they can do their assignments. We have families that don't have technology at home. And so we want there to be a common expectation of what, not the minimum, but what is the common expectation for what students should be able to do on their technology, including participating in those design classes and some of those classes that require more advanced technology. And then to make sure that students and families have the resources that are preparing them for college and the skills they're going to need in life and beyond. And so I think this program is going to do a lot towards elevating the education we can provide here in Stillwater Area Public Schools, and looking forward to getting the ball rolling this fall. And with that, I just want to comment that there's 20 minutes remaining for questions.
Good job.
Oh, very good job.
Didn't quite run that to the bell. So if you have some questions, I'd love to answer them.
Great, thank you so much, John. Before we get into questions, I love a presentation like this because this is a direct example for the public who supported the levies this November of exactly what we're going to be able to do for students and families and for staff, and it's really, really exciting. And I just want to, and I'm sure you, as you're doing this, it was probably a very different experience than when you did your first one, to actually have resources to play with. And so I can't underscore it enough. Thank you to the community for that support of our students in our schools. So with that, are there questions?
I just have a question / comment. I know you said you're going to have training for the teachers and the students, and then for the teachers you'll have live training, and then you'll also have like some movies that they can watch, like that they can go back. And I think it would really be beneficial for the parents to also have movies, because I know as a parent who's been, quote, trained on these systems, and then you use it like 2 months later, it would be great to have a section where you could click on, like, how do I check my kid's grade? How do I, do this? How do I do that?
Great point.
Yeah.
Director Riley.
Thanks. This is really a game changer for everything in our district. I am real curious to know, and aside from the political climate of posting homework and assignments and that, this is from a parent's perspective. Are you going to be able to, because I utilize this now, and it's very important for me because I may or may not have a child who is not keep up on their work. So it's very important for me to be able to go in and actually pull the assignment so I know how to help my child be successful. So are we going to be putting these assignments out for parents to be able to see them so they can help empower their kids to be successful? Because we all know that kids start to slip and they start to feel like they're drowning, and that impacts the mental health of the kids as well. So if we can partner with our staff and our teachers and our kids to make sure everybody's successful.
I think that's a great point. And to touch on what Director Votava was speaking about, so today, parents can sign into Schoology with the same credentials that they use to sign into PowerSchool, but I don't think we've done a sufficient job of letting people know that that's the case and how to do that and how to get there. And that lets parents see all of the assignments.
But I can go into like Google Classroom and I can actually pull in what is needed to be done, not just the assignment and then the grade, the actual work that needs to be done.
And that's the other side of it that we need to work on, I think, as we mature in this environment, which is establishing those standards for how I post assignments. And I can just empathize as a parent of a child that was online learning, and sometimes I pulled down the assignment and I had no idea what it was that the assignment was to do, right? Like, I've got the assignment in my hand, but
How do I help?
and if I wasn't in class, maybe I don't know. And so we need to help our teachers with that, because it requires redesigning so much curriculum, and that'll take time. But I think it's a fair observation.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
This really, I agree, this is a game changer. Providing these sorts of educational tools for our students is going to be huge. We are not in a blackboard world anymore. And so I too want to thank the community for their support to be able to allow us to do something like this. I want to ask a little bit about, you know, how much change are we going to see this fall, and what sort of, and specifically, what are teachers going to need to know? I mean, now, obviously, students have been using technology for the last, year and a half, 2 years because they were doing distance learning. But, do you feel as though teachers are really up to speed in terms of incorporating this educational technology in their instruction, and is there going to need to be some work done on that score?
Yeah, so there's definitely a different answer for elementary than there is for secondary. Secondary today is very hungry for these resources. I mean, I would say elementary is as well, but the number of devices that we have in our system that expired in the last year, we're operating at about 50% capacity compared to what the district is used to having available to students in the classroom. And so now we're going to go from that 50% capacity to full capacity. I think that at secondary, with the 4 years now that we've been in Schoology, there's a lot that's developed there, and teachers have expectations for what their students are doing on the devices, and they already know, you bring it to class, this is what we're gonna use it for. I still think that there's to Director Riley's point, there's still some maturation that we have in that area in terms of how do we further develop these courses so that there's more resource available to kids and parents that's present there. At elementary, we're used to using a shared cart, and there's more dipping into Study Island or some of those supportive apps, maybe using it for some assessments here and there. And while during the pandemic, Seesaw was used at a very high level throughout our system, there's been kind of a retreat from that, right? We've all come back to the classroom, and there's some technology fatigue at elementary, which isn't entirely a bad thing, but it requires us to be very intentional. I think a lot of that's working through the curriculum advisory committee and defining what are these apps and programs that we're using at elementary and why. What is the outcome we expect to get? And what are the tools that are going to help us get to that outcome, and how do we implement those in the classroom? And I think that's going to be a little bit slower process, because where you have a schedule of 6 teachers starting in middle school, and that expectation that all those assignments just get posted, and hopefully the appropriate level of instruction is there, and kids come home and it's homework hour and everything kind of speaks for itself. That's not how elementary classrooms operate. And I don't anticipate that what we're going to see is an incredibly deep Schoology adoption in every classroom, because the learning happens in class in elementary, not online in elementary. And so the platform is used differently in order to provide access to those apps and tools that support learning. And that's going to look different. And we haven't done that in that way before. That's even different than what we saw during the pandemic. And so that's part of that first 3 years of using those clamshell devices. We need time as a curriculum department and as a group of teachers to figure some of these things out. And a lot of that usage makes sense in the classroom, which is why the devices are going to live there. But teachers need time to understand how that practice applies to the home, so that it is an enhancement to our learning environment and not just the substitutional inclusion of technology in the program. So it's going to take some time.
Director Hacker?
Kind of continuing on the classroom front, I'm curious if there will be devices in the classrooms, not necessarily like laptops, but interactive devices, document cameras. I think maybe in your report you had mentioned something about projectors. Is that going to be more of a replacement of what we already have, or is that going to be kind of spread more evenly? I'm not sure what our current device in the classroom look like.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I call that classroom modernization. It's not something that we've done, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. We are very far behind the curve in terms of modernizing our classrooms with technology. So if you tour some of our elementary schools especially, you'll find 8 to 12-year-old projectors, teachers turning off the lights so that that's visible. In other places where we've done some remodeling, we've installed TVs like we have in here in the boardroom, and there's much newer technology. And so there's a big difference across the campus as you go, the district, as you go from one classroom to the next. And so at least $200,000 a year from the technology levy is being dedicated to that modernization. What that's going to look like in the first year is a lot of screens like this. It's first year, maybe 2 years is really our triage point, where the repairs that are required on projectors and interactive boards that are a decade old just skyrocket. And keeping up with that is almost impossible. And so we're planning on, over this next 12 to 18 months, just coming in and wholesale replacing a lot of the really old equipment in classrooms. Then we're going to start transitioning into a little bit more of a direct, planful upgrade to classrooms, getting at what the classroom standard speaks to, which is a nice interactive screen like this in the front of the room, but then being hooked up to in-ceiling speakers, voice amplification systems for the teachers, which are very proven to increase student engagement. And then that also connects to things like audio enhancements for anybody that has any hearing issues or is hard of hearing in the classroom that you can plug in for that hearing assistance. And so it becomes a whole AV system improvement that even starts to connect to things like the building's PA system. You know, we have building PA systems that are 20, 25, 30 years old, and it's very expensive to replace these systems, so they get patched together. But you can talk to the administrators and they'll tell you which corners of their buildings nobody can hear announcements in, et cetera. And so there has to be a planful upgrade of this equipment before it all hits at the same time. And so that's going to be the focus, but it's going to start in that triage state in the first 18 months, where largely teachers, they say, I need my laptop and I need my screen. And then beyond that, we can actually start looking at what does that look like in terms of internal wiring to modernize rooms so they look more like what's going into Brookview. We've been taking efforts at this when rooms are remodeled in sites like Afton or at Stonebridge, et cetera.
Any other questions? I guess that's it. This is very efficient. Thank you, John.
If you come up with other questions, please send them on over and we'll get responses out.
Thank you so much. And this updated plan is online now?
It is online.
Okay.
Yep. Stillwaterschools.org/technology. There's a download link there.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so we'll have a 10-minute break before we start our meeting. Thank you, guys. Okay. We're going to start tonight with our student recognition, and I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Lansfeld to get that started.
Okay, thank you, Chair Sherman and Board Directors. I would like to invite up Reedy Singby, and she'll have a seat right here. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And we are recognizing her tonight, and it's a big congratulations to Stillwater Middle School student Reedy Singby, who will be competing in the National Broadcom Masters STEM competition in June 2022, next month. She won several awards at this year's Minnesota State Science and Engineering Fair. Reedy's project was development of artificial pancreas model to optimize insulin dosage. She constructed a working electrical artificial pancreas model and then combined it with acid-base chemistry to show how our current insulin dosage formula could be improved to prevent hyperglycemia. And that, wow, it's impressive. And if you'd like to say anything, it's live.
Okay. So for my project, the reason why I wanted to do this project is because diabetes is a very serious disease and it affects millions of people around the world. And after some research, I found out that type 1 and type 2 diabetics both suffer from 1 to 2 hypo and hyperglycemic episodes a week, and that 25% of type 2 diabetics suffer from severe hypoglycemia if they use insulin. And this kind of made me realize that since I have many people around me that suffer from diabetes type 1 or type 2, I realized that this is actually like extremely widespread, and it doesn't seem like many people are affected, but a lot of people can be seriously affected by this. And that really made me want to do this project because I wanted to solve this issue of hypo and hyperglycemia. So.
Thank you. That is just impressive. Any questions?
Yes, Director Petrie.
Congratulations. This is a huge honor. I know. I used to be involved in Da Vinci Fest and the science fair, and those students would go on and go to the regional and the state, and I know that this is what you've accomplished is quite an honor. So congratulations on that. How did you do your? Can you talk a little bit about how you did the research? Were you
Yeah.
doing it on individuals? I know that's a kind of a step up in terms of how you do research.
Yeah. So for this project, I did it by myself. Like the research, I did it. But for this project, I didn't really research like people individually themselves, but I tried to like find a lot of more like how does hyperglycemia happen? How does it affect people? And how does the pancreas work? How does the body the chemistry behind it? And that really interested me and like really drew my interest in how it really works inside the body and how continuous blood glucose monitors, they monitor like the level of glucose in the blood, and they are able to like tell diabetics, type 1 and type 2, how much of glucose in their blood, when do you need to administer insulin if they do happen to use insulin. And I kind of really researched like more the topic and devices and chemistry like around those who die of diabetics, yeah.
Great. Yes, Dr. Porbini.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are extremely proud of you, and we know you've got great things ahead of you. What do you want to do when you graduate? Where do you want to go? What do you want to study?
When I graduate, like from high school, you mean? Yeah, I really want to go into the field of like biochemistry. It's really interesting to me how like we can study people and how exactly do their bodies function and how different diseases affect different people and how it really changes the field of how we view things really, like a microscopic level and to like really far away. It really shows like a wide scale of possibilities, and I really like that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else? Can I just ask what grade are you in now?
Yeah.
What grade are you in now? You're
7th grade.
7th grade. Wow.
Wow.
Oh, my.
Quite impressive. All the more impressive.
Right.
Well, congratulations.
Can I just
yes.
ask, what will you
yeah.
be doing at the competition?
For the Broadcom, So it's kind of you have to like online, like it's an online. You have to submit like your entry. What are you doing? And you have to submit like a short little like blurb about like what is your project about. You have to submit like a slideshow about your research and like an abstract with inside of the slideshow. But you also have to like there's an interview. Like judges will come and interview you for like 5-ish minutes, and you have to like really talk about like what you've done in your project.
Thank you.
I have a question. Did you work with a particular teacher or one of your parents for some of this?
Yeah, I worked with my dad for this project. He kind of helped me like get access to supplies like this, this. Like I had like vinegar, baking soda. It's like that's what he helped with.
Great, thank you so much. Just very impressive, so thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, next we're gonna move into our public comment. Before we get started, I'll read the expectations. The school board encourages community input. While comments and questions are welcome, law prohibits the board from discussing concerns about individual employees or students in a public meeting. The board will not deliberate, discuss, or engage in conversation with speakers. However, the board may ask administration to review the concerns presented. Speakers must present their testimony in a respectful manner. Vulgarity, character attacks, malice, or specific complaints identifying staff or students by name or implication will not be permitted. We will stop the proceedings immediately if employee or student privacy issues are raised and direct the speaker to forward comments regarding individual employees or students to the superintendent. And with that, our first speaker today is Anna Zanko.
Not to go first.
You can just go ahead and sit.
Good evening. My name is Anna Zanko. I live in Stillwater, and I'm here to speak to you tonight about the transportation proposal that you'll be soon voting on. In an email that was sent out on Tuesday, parents were told that the proposal put forth would cut busing for GATE students in the southern part of our district. And the email characterized the GATE program as a choice program, presumably alleviating the district of its statutory obligation to provide transportation to students in that program. And I find the characterization as a choice program interesting because GATE students don't apply to be in GATE. Rather, the district sets the admission standards. It identifies which students are admitted and then offers students a spot in the program. So nothing about this is initiated by the student or the parent. And I think the district's own policy doesn't characterize GATE as a choice program either. District Policy 513 starts out by stating that it is the policy of ISD 834 to place each student in the academic program best suited to provide opportunity for the highest level of academic achievement and social and emotional development. With regard to what programs are to be provided, the same policy section states that the district shall provide educational programs for the gifted and talented. And so shall is not a word that I think describes a choice, at least on the part of the district. And I think my experience as a parent also tells me that GATE is not a choice for my child. I have a third grader at Anderson Elementary who will be going into the GATE program next year. And I can tell you that she needs the GATE program. She needs, I think, this enrichment, and she needs to really grow as a learner and to grow as a person. And I think the same can be said for other GATE students and families. I think they'd feel the same way. And so I think what I would like the board to consider is that if busing is cut for the GATE program in the southern part of the district, it's inevitable that kids will not be able to participate in GATE because they can't get there to the program or their parents' work does not allow them to transport them. And not only does this feel inequitable, I mean, why should the South Side students not have the same opportunities as the North Side students? But I think it's contrary to the commitment that our district has made to providing these programs to ensure that gifted learners are achieving at the highest level possible. So I would just ask the board to really look at this policy 513 and consider that when you're taking a look at this issue. The other thing I just want to comment on is if you do elect to move forward with this, I would ask that you consider whether there are any compromises that might alleviate some of the pressure on parents who are working a traditional 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or what have you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Okay. Our next speaker, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing names correctly here, Katerina Kadnikova. I hope I didn't butcher it.
So my name is Dr. Katerina Kadnikova. I'm a parent of a 6th grader in GATE. Members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, fellow ponies, I rise in strong opposition to the proposal to eliminate busing for the GATE students. This proposal is non-equitable, discriminatory, and it's detrimental to the unity of the district. We are being told that GATE is a program of choice. It well may be, but if the busing is not provided for all GATE students, then the choice for the children of the 3 North elementary schools is quite different than the choice for the children of the 4 South elementary schools. It is not a secret that the demographics of the district have changed dramatically in the last 15 years. It is not a secret that now there is a divide between the rural North and the suburban South. Instead of resisting, it is time to acknowledge this change and unite the district. Many of the decisions of the board seem to tell the families in the suburban part of the district that we are squatters and interlopers and do not belong. Who benefits from this? Imagine if most of the children from the South would not attend the GATE program. Would it benefit the GATE program? Would it benefit the children? Would these children stay in their assigned schools, or would they look for the opportunities in other districts? And if they do, how would this benefit the district if the southern part does not really feel as a part of the district and always looks elsewhere? The house divided against itself cannot stand. For as long as GATE program resided in SMS, the busing was provided for all GATE students in the district. The board has to make the right decision for the unity of the district and continue to provide equal opportunities to all children of the district to ensure inclusion of all children, regardless of where they live, in all the district's programs. We here in the South love the Stillwater GATE program. We love the Stillwater district. We are not squatters or interlopers. We are a huge asset for the district, and we want to contribute to the life of the district, but such measures make us feel discriminated against. So I call upon the board to work for the benefit of the whole district and to continue providing busing for all the GATE students in the district, as it has been done since the GATE program was established in its current form at Stillwater Middle School. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Cami Kirkson.
Good evening. My name is Cami Kirkson, and my husband and I have 3 kids in the Stillwater school system in grades 3, 5, and 7. Our 5th and 7th grader are both in the GATE program and have been without busing since September. Fortunately for the GATE program, they are absolutely thriving academically. There is absolutely no way they would be as successful and well-rounded if it weren't for the GATE program and its specialized teachers. Contrary to what some believe, gifted education is tailored to the top 2% kids academically. That is not the same as a gifted school choice. Having the Spanish immersion school in Stillwater is awesome, but it's a choice to have your kids in that program. Gifted kids need to be taught to be challenged, and GATE actually teaches them these skills. If they don't learn, it creates issues in high school and college. And we have learned this from the teachers there, that GATE kids' brains actually do not prioritize executive functioning skills such as organization and social appropriateness. GATE incorporates these skills. Yesterday, while driving my son home from school, I asked my 13-year-old to describe what he remembers doing for math in 3rd grade before he was invited to the GATE program. During math class at Anderson Elementary, he'd get his work done in a few minutes and spend the remainder of the time walking around the room, these are his words, looking out the window, working on paper airplanes, and some days his teacher would toss him a worksheet or a Sudoku puzzle simply to keep him occupied. He is in that top 2%. He needs to be challenged. He was not learning anything new. We considered homeschooling him, but it just wasn't feasible with 3 kids age 7 and under. We considered private schooling, but aside from the expense, the main reason we didn't is that we needed the public school transportation for a cohesive family schedule. All our eggs were in one basket, so to speak, and we were holding out for the GATE program, and thankfully our son was accepted. 2 years later, our daughter was also accepted, and our 3rd grader is at Anderson Elementary, and for him, the traditional classroom is exactly where he's thriving. Since the superintendent's email, I know personally that GATE teachers have already been notified. Multiple parents, not a couple, multiple parents will be moving their kids out of GATE. We should think about this decision. Canceling GATE busing is not an equal impact and creates disparity. The single parents, the 2 parent working families, the families who have multiple young kids or kids with special needs, not all those parents have the luxury to drive their kids 2 ways daily to a public school for the entire school year. We were fortunately able to do that last year, but not everyone can. GATE is an official Stillwater area elementary school, and it deserves the same busing support as any other in the district. I simply disagree that GATE is a choice. GATE is a need. If a student tests into GATE, let's not hold them back. Give those kids a bus and let them thrive.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Hattie Williams.
Hi. I'm here tonight to share support for additional busing, definitely, and adding routes above the unacceptable levels experienced over the past year. But I'm also here urging you to reconsider the recommendations to eliminate transportation for GATE students outside SMS boundaries. 2 questions I ask you to consider about this. Why put infrastructure and resources into a program like GATE, then fall short of offering transportation for probably half of the invited students? Second, how is this a fair and equitable solution to offer transportation to some GATE students but not others? Students for this program are selected based on abilities and unique needs, and attendance should not be dictated or skewed based on where they live. This is not a choice program. As stated on the district's website, eligibility for GATE is a research-based best practice assessment to determine which students need specialized instructional services and programs to meet their full potential. By taking away transportation for some GATE students, you are not just changing how they get to and from school, you are potentially eliminating their best chance to reach their full potential. My child and others will likely not be able to attend GATE if you vote to eliminate that option for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker this evening is Anandi Chari.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Anandi Chari. I am a proud mom of a GATE student studying in Stillwater Middle School. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all board members for their fantastic jobs. I am so appreciative of all the honest and transparent communications that you as board members communicate to us parents. We love the teachers' dedication to academic achievement, student progress, preparing for success, school quality, school safety, and overall preparation for future workforce. A lot of websites have talked great things about Stillwater area public schools. It has been considered as part of top 20% of all public schools in Minnesota. Today, I am here to talk about the busing like other parents. And I don't want to take it on myself personally, but it is on behalf of all the GATE families. It is the only program where we confidently send our bright kids to get the best academic education. And I see that in my daughter, she is getting it. And I love this program. But just because of this busing issue, it has caused a lot of anxiety in our family. Especially me and my husband, we work in corporates, and please believe me, they are not considerate. They say, oh, you need to pick up your son or drop your son or drop your daughter. No, no problem. Do you think they are going to let you do that? It's going to cost our jobs. We have been very understanding, very accommodative of whatever happened. We understand COVID happened, pandemic happened. We know that there were a lot of bus shortages, bus driver shortages, everything we understand. We have been so very accommodative. But obviously, last Tuesday's email from the superintendent just felt very, very scary for us because, we don't want this to happen again this year because that's going to cost not only our jobs, it is going to cause a lot of ripple effects. Please understand us. And I have few thoughts about how you can think about busing facilities. There are three things that I want you to think about. I know you guys would have probably explored multiple opportunities to make us parents very happy. I know that. But still, because of all the considerations that you guys are having, I thought I would bring this along. Please evaluate your current routes and see if you could bring any efficiency. And if it is not a bus, can we do some vans, poolings, some contracts, something to help us? And then the last one I'm thinking about is is there a possibility to have multiple vendors for different routes? So please help us get better, not only for sending us to the GATE program, but also, bring peace in our own families and sense and sanity. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment for the evening.
I'm sorry, make one very short comment?
In addition to what you had already said, or?
I just wanted to point out that Reedy, the student that presented who won that award, she's in the GATE program.
Oh, thank you for letting us know that. Thank you. Great. Okay, so now we're going to call to order our business meeting, and we're going to ask Joan to do the roll call.
Director Hockert? Here. Director Kelsenberg? Director Petrie?
Here.
Director Porbeni?
Here.
Director Riley?
Here.
Director Vitava?
Here.
Chair Sherman?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Okay, Director Petrie, and a second?
A second.
Okay, Director Hockert. Thank you. I was looking at the next thing. Okay, all those in favor of approving tonight's agenda, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, tonight we're going to turn over our student report. It looks like we have a new face here that, Ella, you can introduce us to.
This is Steven.
Welcome, Stephen.
Well,
Nice
thank
to have you here.
Thanks.
All right, begin soon?
Yeah.
Okay. Softball started sections this week with a win over Roseville and Mounds View. They play White Bear Lake on Tuesday. The boys tennis team won their first two matches in sections, but lost close semifinal game against Matamidi. They compete in individuals later this week. The boys track team placed fourth in true team state last Friday, and both boys and girls are competing in conference championships right now. Synchronized swimming competes at state this weekend, hoping to defend their state title from last year. The boys lacrosse team beat Lakeville North last night, and they play Prior Lake tomorrow to finish off the regular season. Then playoffs begin on Wednesday. The girls lacrosse team had a close 5-3 win, but still got the conference title, and they'll play the top-ranked Edina tonight. Playoffs begin next Friday. Boys and girls golf team will be our top 3 in the conference all season, and they both compete in their sections.
Seniors were able to acquire their caps and gowns today from school. Yearbooks were distributed to all grades today and will be available tomorrow still. Seniors had decision day last Wednesday, where seniors were able to celebrate their post-graduation plans with their friends and peers. 6 Stillwater area high school students competed in the Business Professionals of America National Leadership Conference in Dallas, Texas. And as a little shout out to each of them, Philip Eviston for interview skills placed 5th. Philip Eviston and Abby Kovalak for presentation management team placed 11th. Mushtaq Ibrahim, Jay Lohr, and Maxine Osai, podcast production team, got top 40. Abby Kovalak for entrepreneurship placed top 40. And Kuljas Singhvi for Java programming placed top 40. And finally, many teachers are wrapping up the year with final tests and projects, most of them choosing May 27th as a deadline for students.
Thank you. Now, is this the last meeting we'll have for the year where you'll be here? Yes. Okay, well, just an official thank you to the entire student council. I know we've had kind of some people come in, and so people like you, Stephen, and others, it's really nice to have your presence. So again, thank you for the entire year, especially you, Ella. You've been here a long time now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go to our superintendent report. Superintendent Lansfeld.
Thank you, Chair Sherman and Board Directors. This has been a very difficult week for our entire country as we mourn the loss of life at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. Our thoughts are with the entire Uvalde community, and we hold the families of the victims in our hearts. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. The tragedy in Uvalde has us all thinking about the safety of our own schools. Earlier this year, we began updating our safety procedures, implementing new standard response protocols, and providing training to staff and students. The implementation and training will continue into the fall. We are always exploring ways to enhance prevention measures and upgrade building security to make our schools safer places for our kids and for our staff. This is an ongoing conversation, not just in our district, but in districts across the nation. We will continue to work with safety experts, both locally and nationally, as well as with parents and community members to address this important issue. Okay, during the meeting this evening, we'll be providing a report on transportation service for next fall. The board will not be taking formal action this evening, but instead we'll be sharing our plans to begin restoring bus service to our pre-pandemic levels. Our new transportation vendor is doing everything possible to purchase buses and hire drivers before the start of the school year. At this time, we've been able to guarantee service to 70 routes, which is an improvement from the 65 routes in service currently. Their goal is to bring us back to pre-pandemic services, that's 79 routes, as soon as possible. We'll be sharing more information during our meeting. Just an update on bathrooms at the bus garage. We'll be going out for bids in August for additional restrooms in our district's bus facility. Currently, we have 3 bathrooms and additional portable restrooms. This addition is budgeted at $175,000, and this project will bring the facilities up to code. Our students continue to do amazing things, and I just want to take some time to recognize a few of their accomplishments. Congratulations to the Stillwater speech team, which finished 11th in the nation out of 206 teams who qualified for the National Individual Events Tournament of Champions. The tournament brings together the nation's best and brightest students and teachers in oral interpretation and public address. Our high school journalists have been honored by the Minnesota High School Press Association with several gold medallion awards. The awards recognize the top individual work in 7 categories: broadcast, literary arts magazine, newspaper, news magazine, online, photojournalism, social media, and yearbook. The Pony Express has earned 6 gold medallions, while the Cabaconian earned 4. Marketing students from Stillwater Area High School were tops in the Minnesota Best Prep Stock Market game. The teams placed first and second in the statewide competition, and 2 Stillwater Area High School students have been named triple threat finalists by Hennepin Theater Trust. This is the high school theater's highest honor. Bria Davis and Elise Karlstadt are among just 24 students across the state who were recognized for acting, dancing, and singing. And I want to give a big congratulations to our 83 graduates who received community scholarships last week. And I also want to thank our amazing community for their generosity. More than $400,000 in community scholarships were awarded. 69 local donors offered 123 scholarships to Stillwater Area High School students, and that does not include national scholarships and those given by individual colleges and universities. And finally, I had the opportunity to attend the retirement dinner where we honored 36 employees who are retiring from Stillwater Area Public Schools this school year. You can find the list of retirees on our district website. We are so very grateful to each of these amazing individuals for all they have done to support our students and families throughout their careers. And last week, I was able to attend the Native American Graduate Honoring Ceremony, and today I was able to attend an ALC graduation ceremony. They graduate students throughout the year, but they had a few more graduate today. And congratulations to our staff and to our students with all of their achievements and the retirement. And I have to show you, I received this today from the ALC students, and I'm going to treasure this forever. It's an amazing program. That's it.
Great. Thank you so much for that report. And I have nothing tonight, but we're going to move.
Question.
Oh, sure.
So this is the first I've heard about the addition of the bathrooms. Could you elaborate on where the fund or what fund is going to be used?
More information will be coming. Just wanted to let the community know, but we'll be going out for bids and we'll talk to finance about that and we'll bring it to the finance and ops.
Okay.
It's just preliminary right now.
Nice for the board to know too.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. We have item A, minutes of the May 12th, 2022 business meeting. Item B, payment of invoices, May 14th, 2022 through May 27th, 2022. Item C, accept gifts and donations, April 2022. Item D, treasurer's report, April 2022. Item E, elementary math materials. And item F, human resources personnel report. Can I get a motion to approve consent? So moved. Okay, Director Hockert, and a second. Director Petrie, all those in favor of approving consent, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're going to move on to action items. Our first action item of the evening is an increase in nutrition service costs. Mark Drummerhausen, welcome.
Good evening. Chair Sherman, Superintendent Lansfeld, members of the board. Today I'm here to discuss a 20-cent increase in our breakfast and lunch prices for next school year for all of our levels, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, as well as adult lunches. There's quite a few reasons why we're doing this. The first one is obvious. We've seen increased costs with our food. We've seen increased costs with our supplies. We're starting to get delivery charges on our food and supplies, which we haven't seen in the past. Also, with a lot of the items that we've been getting this year in schools have seen substitutions for different things throughout the year, and the substitutions that we get from vendors come at a higher rate sometimes. But the other big thing is the last few years, we've had free lunches the last 2 years at all of our schools through MDE, and that reimbursement rate is higher than the rate that we get now with the free lunches. So our reimbursement rate is going down, and then our costs of food and supplies and delivery charge, et cetera, are going up. So we kind of have an attached list of other districts around the area and kind of where their prices and where ours would fit in that comparison. And if that 20 cents is approved this year, that would start July 1st here in about a month or so. And then we would not look to increase our nutrition services prices for the following year, which is the 23-24 school year. So this would be good for next school year and the year after that. So with that, I will open up to any questions or comments that you may have.
Any questions? Director Vodova?
Yeah, I only have one question. Is like, I know we wouldn't want to raise our food prices for the year after, but we really have no way of knowing what inflation is gonna be in the next year. So can we really say that, like, that we absolutely, I mean, we might have to raise it again, right?
Well, we would look to make a
Yeah.
commitment here with this. We would look to make a 2-year commitment to our prices for next school year and the following year after, and then kind of reevaluate where we are from there.
Any other questions? Director Hockert?
For families, I know that we've had free lunches for the past 2 years. Could you speak to us a little bit about how to apply for free and reduced? Like when does that process begin, especially if families are really pressed, knowing that the prices of food are going to be going up and more might be eligible for that program?
Great question. So that's actually a renewal that happens every single year. So at families that, and you can do any time starting in July. Those forms are online. We also have them in each of our buildings as well as Essential Service Office. And so all you need to fill that out and then return that either to your school or to the district office, and we'll get those processed as soon as we can. So every year, even if you applied this year and we're on a free and reduced lunch, that is something that needs to be renewed every year. It's not just a one-time and you're done. It's something that gets looked at for your financial statuses each and every year. So, great question. And I know also our communications department will have something going out towards the start of the year, whether that's late July or early August, in kind of our welcome back communications. That information is always included and will be included again this year.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion? Director Porbeni?
What was that again, sorry?
What's your, would you like to make a motion to approve?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Make a motion.
or did you have a question? I'm sorry, or did you have a question?
No, no
Oh,
questions for
Okay,
me.
is there a second to approve? Okay, we have a first and a second with Director Petrie. All those in favor of approving the increase in nutrition service costs, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mark. Okay, we're going to move on to the approval of Policy 213, School Board Committees. This is coming to action this evening after a couple meetings of discussion. So we're going to, with Jennifer Cherry being out today, we're going to turn it over to Director Hockert.
Great, thank you. So tonight, the Policy Working Group will be presenting the School Board Committee's Policy 213 for a final reading. Policy 213 has not been revised since its second reading on May 12th of this year. Just to kind of give a quick update, we did take a look at Policy 213 and reviewed the comments from our last board meeting, and we did decide to not do any additional changes to the policy. There was concern and questions brought up about using the Personnel Committee to be specifically a superintendent evaluation or expectation committee, that it would be kind of reincarnated as such. But after some discussion, we decided that that was something that the whole board should weigh in on, and we definitely noticed that there is a desire from the board to kind of hash out a process for that superintendent evaluation going forward. But we did not feel that that necessarily would be committee work. However, in the policy itself, we did leave the door open for ad hoc committees. So if down the line we decide to create a new ad hoc committee specifically for superintendent evaluation, we certainly could do that. So that was kind of a summary of our discussion, and open up for any additional questions or comments before we have motion.
Director Riley.
Just clarification. So now if we vote on this and then it gets removed, right, we don't have personnel anymore. How are we handling the transition of the new superintendent coming in and the expectations and what's, I haven't heard anything, seen anything as a board member of how things are going to be organized to make sure that things are communicated clearly to the new superintendent. So I like to be prepared, I like to plan, and I like to make sure that we have things in order. And that's just my concern, is how long is it gonna get up and get moving? And are we gonna have things in place in a timely manner?
That, I know Dr. Funk sent some information to the full board this week about kind of what his plans are, and I know we are gonna do a retreat, and Joan and I are gonna work on kind of when people are available. to have that retreat. Part of that retreat is going to be to hash out some of the expectations that with a new superintendent, exactly what you said, because we need to do that as a group. And so we'll send out kind of a survey, basically. If people prefer we talked about, do we do weeknights? Do we do one Saturday? Where we just hash that out. And then there's also a policy that the policy committee would like to get all director input on before they really start the work of getting involved. And so we'll be following up with more information on that. But it'd
Okay.
probably be like July, I think, like June, end of June, July.
Okay, and so just to be clear, to make sure that the expectations are laid out in the evaluation, I would like all those pieces for myself personally, upfront and taken care of immediately, so he knows what our expectations are, because that's only fair.
Yep. Great.
Okay.
Great. Any additional questions or comments on policy 213? No?
Is there a motion? Do you want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Sure, I move to approve policy 213.
All right, and I will second it. Okay, so there's a motion and a second to approve policy 213. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And now we'll move to item C, which is the revocation of policy 201.9 board working groups. And we'll go back to Director Hucker.
I'll take that one again. So the policy working group will be presenting board working groups policy 201.9 for a final reading. Policy 201.9 is redundant with policy 213, and we will be asking to revoke that. This is, again, one of the old BGP policies, and it is redundant. So now that we have a newly approved 213, we feel comfortable taking this one off the books. So, any questions, comments?
No? Great. I can make that motion to revoke policy 201.9. Can I get a second? Director Vadava? Okay. All those in favor of revoking policy 201.9, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And now we're moving to item D, and we have a vendor and trustee change for VEBA health reimbursement accounts. And we have Cindy here. Hi, Cindy.
Good evening, Chair Sherman, Director, Superintendent Lansfeld. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. On the March 31st school board agenda on the consent items, there was an update about insurance for next year, and that included information that we are needing to switch the company that we use for our VEBA product. VEBA is an HRA, a health reimbursement arrangement that goes along with the high deductible plan that we offer for our employees. We had been using a company called Further. They were great. They were bought by a larger company who is no longer interested in offering the VEBA portion of the work that they had done. And so we got to go out and seek a new vendor. We worked with 8 other districts and One Digital, our insurance consultant, to look at different options, and One Bridge was the company that was selected. What we're asking for tonight is that One Bridge uses a different bank for the VEBA trustee, and so you need to do an official resolution to change the trustee for the VEBA dollars that go along with the VEBA program, the health reimbursement arrangement for our employees. The resolution is in your packet, and I will read the first part of it just so that it's on the record. It's a resolution designating One Bridge Benefits, Inc. as third-party administrator and Washington Trust Bank as trustee. Whereas a meeting of the governing body of the plan sponsor was properly noted and held, during which the following resolution was passed. And the resolution, like I said, is in the packet. And so I hope that you will approve the resolution so that we can move forward. We have been educating our employees on this change that will come July 1st, and they will be getting a lot more information between now and then. So thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Is there a motion to accept to adopt the resolution? Thank you, Director Vadava. Is there a second? Director Petrie? Okay, and this requires a roll call vote, so we'll go to Joan.
Director Hucker?
Yes.
Director Kelsenberg? Director Petrie?
Yes.
Director Porbeni?
Yes.
Director Riley?
Yes.
Director Pateva?
Yes.
Chair Sherman?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Next, we're going to move on to reports, and tonight we have a transportation update, and we're going to go to Mark Drummerhausen.
Good evening again. I'd like to welcome up here with me Nikki Pangro and Amanda Whelan from our transportation consultant with CISO, and then as well as Caleb Drexler Booth from our teaching and learning department here to help answer questions and comments here once we're done. Today we're here to talk about our transportation update for the summer as we head in and talking about next year so we can update with our families and start to plan ahead a little bit. The first thing is we're ensuring safe and consistent and reliable transportation services for our families is the first priority that we have. The second one, since our transportation provider has been approved, Schmitty's and Sons, they've been actively recruiting not only drivers and office staff and mechanics, but also trying to secure buses for next year. So far, since that has been approved, they have held 3 open houses here at Oak Park with over 100 prospective employees that have attended those open houses and have been interviewed and possibly employment for Schmitty's and Sons. And of those 100, that includes bus drivers, it includes mechanics, it includes office staff, it includes special education drivers, it includes monitors, et cetera. So it's not all just drivers, but over 100 staff. We had a great turnout at our first 3 open houses here with Schmitty's and Sons. Currently, we are running 65 routes on a daily basis, and then next year, to this point, Schmitty's and Sons has committed to 70, so we can ensure consistent, reliable service with our families for those 70 routes. So we're here to provide an update of kind of what those 70 routes would look like and how they would be allocated with the goal of having full 79 for next year. And we're going to continue to work, we're going to continue to recruit, again, not only drivers and workers, but also securing buses is the other thing as well to make sure that we have the adequate number of buses for all our routes. So our goal is to have 79 before the start of the year, but as of right now, we're going to talk about 70 because that's what we can guarantee where we are at this point. We will have finalized numbers in the middle of July, so we'll come back at the July board meeting and talk about where we are for finalized numbers and what those routes looks like and what type of service that we can provide from there. The second slide that you see here is just kind of a comparison of where we are and other of our surrounding and neighboring districts are in terms of elementary, middle school, and high school zones. So the top is kind of where we have been pre-pandemic with 0.5 for elementary, 1 mile for middle school, and 1 mile for high school as well. That gets us 79 routes. So as we look at going from 79 routes to 70 to where we are today, in our planning phase at least to get to 70, we want to make, just kind of update you where we are with those route allocations. So with the 70 routes, we would be keeping elementary the same at 0.5 miles. We would be keeping middle school the same at 1 mile. And then we would be extending the high school zone from 1 mile to 2 miles as one of the recommendations. In addition to that, we would not have transportation for GATE or Spanish immersion as it currently looks right now with our transportation services, but we do have a plan to try to transport, kind of intermediary plan to try to transport some of our GATE students as best we can. So we are looking at creating hubs at each of our elementary schools. So the students who are at, we'll say Afton Lakeland, for instance, we'd be looking at creating a hub for those Afton Lakeland students at Afton Lakeland and the Brookview students at Brookview and the Lake Elmo students at Lake Elmo and the Anderson students at Anderson, where the families could drop off their child at the elementary school at the beginning of the day. The bus would start the route to pick up those students from the school. So it wouldn't necessarily be at their bus stop. It'd be the hub at the school. So they'd pick up the students from that elementary school. Then they would run the middle school route and then drop those kids off at Stillwater Middle School. Then at the end of the day, the students would get on that bus, they would run the middle school route, and then they would take those students back to the elementary school where they are at and then drop them off there. And then that bus would stay at that elementary school for Tier 2 and run that route from their Tier 2 route from that school. Now, the next question you're probably thinking is time. What are we looking at here from a time frame of getting my child on the bus and how long are they riding? We're getting those finalized right now, but we're looking at a drop-off time at around 6:40, 6:50. That has not been finalized yet, but it's around 6:40, 6:50. Now remember, Stillwater Middle School starts at 7:50. So you try to have a drop-off time around 10 minutes or so ahead of that. So you're looking at a drop-off time of 7:40. So a ride time in the morning for those students would be around an hour to 50 minutes. Same thing in the afternoon. School ends at 2:20. And so as we run those routes for our Stillwater Middle School students, drop them off and get back to the elementary schools finish at 3:15. So we'd be looking at a drop-off back at the elementary school at about 3:10. So school ends at 2:20. They'd be back at that elementary school about 3:10 for a drop-off. So it'd be looking at about a 50-minute route or so there from that hub. So within the 70 routes that we are talking about here right now, that could incorporate those hubs that we are discussing here within those 70 routes. Now, as we get additional buses and as we get additional drivers, we will look to bring those routes back to more normal pre-pandemic routes that we had, but just as a first step, that's kind of something we're looking and exploring finalizing and fine-tuning that option. I just want to know that this is not a recommendation that as an administrative team we take lightly. We've had a lot of discussions as our admin team and as a whole group. It's not just transportation, there's finance, there's teaching and learning, there's community ed, there's all the different areas within our admin team, and we've talked about a lot of different options. And as a group, this isn't just something us here that are sitting here, but as a group, to get the 70 routes, this is what our group feels would be the best, to do the half mile at elementary and keep that, do 1 mile at middle school, so your elementary and middle school routes are consistent, and then expanding the high school zone is what our administrative team recommendation is. So with that, we're open here, all of us, for any questions or comments that you may have.
We looked at this and we did talk about hazardous roads, because there are a lot of hazardous roads, and we prioritized our youngest learners with those roads too.
I will open it up for questions. Director Petrie?
So when we had our last discussion about this, which was about a month ago, I believe, I think that there was some discussion at that time about, expanding the zones in the secondary. And I see that, you are talking about a 2-mile zone at the high school, but I thought that we were also exploring the idea of increasing the zone for the middle school. But I see that that is not what you are coming now and recommending, so I'm just kind of wondering what the thought process was behind that.
So that is an alternate way to get to the 70 routes, is do all secondary at 2 miles, and then that could include gate transportation with that. If you did all middle school to 2 miles, then you could provide gate transportation within that. What we looked at, and the reason why we are recommending where we're at, is we looked at Oakland Middle School in particular, and having Manning Avenue and 10th Street there that in the past has been considered hazardous roads, that we considered having that transportation to the middle school within a recommendation, so bringing that 2 mile back down to 1 mile to where it currently is pre-pandemic.
Director Porbeni?
Thank you, Chair Sherman. Thank you. Thank you, Director Petrie, for stating that, and that's the reality. I mean, you brought something to us and we gave you feedback that this is what we would like to do, but that's completely different from what you're presenting right now. If we move the high school to 2 miles and the middle school to 1.5, that will give accommodation for the gate students within the 70 buses that you just talked about. So we don't have to talk about the hubs anymore. So the 1.5 for middle schools and 2, let me know if I'm wrong, because the presentation that you gave us and the recommendation or the proposal that we were thinking is completely different from what's on the board here. And that's the thing. I mean, if you bring something to us and we go, this is what we think should happen, but it's different. That's my concern. So if we do the 1.5, and I'm actually seeing the presentation from the last time as we speak. If we do 0.5 for elementary school, 1.5 for middle school, 2 for high school, that would actually give us an opportunity without sacrificing anything, because of the 0.5 that has been added, mileage has been added to the middle school, and the expansion of the mileage for the high school will give us an opportunity to include the GATE program without any extra cost. So if you want to bring back what was presented prior, so we can take a look and we can all see what was presented and how it was presented, the cost savings, and
But was that at the 0.5 for elementary and 1.5 for secondary, was that 70 routes, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And two,
But that's 1.5 for secondary and the 0.5, excuse me, the 0.5 for elementary and the 1.5 for secondary is 70 routes for that. That does not include the gate transportation.
do you have that slide? I mean, I think it would make it a lot clearer for us
I have
to
it in front of me,
see.
I don't have it, we can pull that up here for you.
If you don't mind.
Yep.
Yep, thank you.
Director Vadova?
I have two things I guess I wanted to ask. One is the Manning is very dangerous. Like if you ever drive by there in the morning right now, it's a madhouse and it is dangerous. I mean, because people drive fast on that road and there's just cars. Yeah, I mean, it is very dangerous. So I guess there's that. The second thing I wanted to say, and I don't know if this is even possible, but just maybe it's an option and it would kind of depend on, I think, statutes and also gate parents, but could there be a way that the gate day was shrunk a little bit, but then the gate students could take the normal buses to their elementary school and then use them as a hub? So like because their day would have to be shrunk because they'd have to get back to the hub school, but then they would all have, that's a bad idea. Okay, I just was wondering, like, it's just another option, like if you wanted the busing.
As an experienced gate parent over several years, it just impacts homework time, after-school activities. You need to plan on getting home at a certain time, and that just doesn't work.
Okay, I'm sorry. We just,
Yeah.
thank you. We just have to be able to conduct the business meeting. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, actually, I didn't mean that their time would be different at home. Their time would be different at school. But that's just, I mean, it's just, I don't know if that's even possible, but that would allow them to use the normal buses.
Yeah, and we do have, such as our special ed students with IEPs, there's twice exceptional students. They are required, we must provide them that school time.
But not the gate. We're talking
Well,
about gates.
Gate 2 can have IEPs, but those students need that required time. We shouldn't be taking kids down early before that bell rings.
Do you, by any chance, have the slide? Okay.
She's pulling up.
And then I have a copy. I have a copy.
And
of it,
then
too.
why we went this way, we really wanted to put safety first for the kids with the roads, the hazardous roads. That was really important to us.
Can I follow? Yes, Director Petrie.
I wanted to just follow up on the safety thing, because I do understand that Manning and 10th, that's a dangerous area. But Oakland is kind of like an island there that is bounded by 10th and Manning. So if we're concerned about safety, wouldn't we need to have a zero zone there? I mean, I'm not even sure what is the difference really between a 1 and a 1.5 when the danger is right there on the boundary of the school?
That is correct. It basically is a zero. It is a all transportation zone because that's where it is. So whether it's, if we're going to conclude, and that's where our conversation was, if we're going to include hazardous roads, like for elementary, we're considering hazardous roads at 0.5. At middle school, we talked about including hazardous roads. And at Oakland, the ones are right in front of it, which is Manning and 10th Street. So basically Oakland has an all transportation zone. It's really be looking at keeping Stillwater Middle the same.
I see. Okay, so even before the busing pandemic crisis, we were busing everybody to Oakland. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Kelsenberg.
Yeah, regarding the gate transportation, the buses already, they're housed almost down in that southern area where the bus base is. So any bus doing an Oakland Middle School route is heading north. And when they have picked up gate kids, they just start earlier, 20 minutes earlier, make a swing through the south before they head up north. So I'm wondering if that could be considered not even an extra route to pick up the gate kids. Their only real consequence is they just have a longer route because they're the first ones picked up before all the Stillwater middles on that way. And so it's different than Spanish immersion, because Spanish immersion would be another route, going to a specific school. But the buses are already going to Stillwater Middle. They just start earlier and pick up those kids, which is what they do currently.
So in the mornings, that's great. We've got all the time in the world in the mornings to add those to the beginning. Our struggle then becomes getting them home in the afternoon and still being able to get that bus to an elementary to bring those students home as well. And that's kind of where the hub stop idea stemmed from, where if we can at least get them home, get them back to their home elementary, and then that bus is, say, they're at Brookview, they're ready for their elementary kids to then bring them home.
I
It
only
just,
had half a
it
solution.
saves time in the afternoon. That's the struggle, is getting everybody home and getting that bus to an elementary school in a timely manner.
Our bell times are just too close.
Okay.
Director Hocker?
Thanks. This conversation has kind of gone in multiple different directions and very much evolved since our last work session. And just to kind of pulling everything together here, originally we started talking about the changes in bus routes as a cost-saving measure, because we did take on a new bus company that's $1 million extra each year. So as you can see up there, we've got some cost savings that were initially presented to us. And now in that conversation, we're looking at the special programming and kind of talking about kind of inequalities in our special programming, that we do provide busing to gate and we don't to our dual immersion. And we're trying to figure out how much more would it be to bring both levels up, and also do we need a policy change in including those special programs in the policy itself. So that was another piece on kind of how GATE came into it. And then we also brought up safety issues and the hazardous roads, and then the actual number of buses on the routes. And that, I feel like, is our last piece that got added in, was that hard and fast number of 70 buses. So I guess I'm trying to process all these different factors, and I appreciate that the administration is trying to make accommodations, especially for the gate transportation and the new addition of the hub idea. But I guess I'm trying to figure out where we are going with this conversation. Are we trying to just kind of bring everybody along? Is this, as I'm hearing it, it sounds like the hubs is kind of a patch for what we are trying to get to, which is ultimately returning to full capacity, which was not where we started with the initial conversation on cost savings. So I guess my roundabout full circle question is, how does that impact us as a budget? Why have we changed the focus of the conversation so much? And kind of what decision do we need to be making as a board at this time in moving forward?
Yeah, we would like to recommend that we maintain for this year and get to where we were pre-pandemic. Okay, because we need to reevaluate everything that we're doing here, and that will give us some time to do that. But with our referendum, we wanted to maintain what we were offering before. And then you can reevaluate that.
I don't understand that.
Hold on one second. I've got Dr. Porbeni.
Thank you for that. Truthfully, I appreciate what you guys have presented here. But I still think that we need to reconsider the GATE program. One of the parents actually used the term shall, not may, but shall. If we decide to not provide the opportunity for some of the students, those inequalities will be real. Some of the parents, truthfully, may not. If I'm in that position, I probably will do exactly the same thing. You may not have the same opportunity for kids, even if they gain admission to, or they gain opportunities to the GATE program the next time, because of the busing situation, will not be there, may not be able to go. And there you're skewing the process of who should be in the program and who shouldn't. And so that would have an impact in the classroom. If you have kids, because of transportation, that are unable to go to that program, teachers will be having some issues because, of course, GATE kids are special. So I really think that we need to consider that. Are we doing it just for money, or we're doing it specifically to make sure we don't have certain impacts that will boomerang, not just for the families, the children specifically, but also for our teachers? And if we have very special kids in our community, I think it's our responsibility to provide that support to those children. If we look at what's out there now, 0.5 for elementary school, is it not possible to move secondary to 2? And if we move secondary to 2, a lot of the kids in our high school drive. If we move, I'm not saying that they don't deserve to be bused, but a lot of them don't even use the bus. My son doesn't. So you have all those empty spaces, and a lot of his friends don't. So if we move that to 2, we move, keep elementary. I know Lake Elmo is quite dangerous, that space there. So keep it at 5. Don't you think we'll be able to kind of rebalance the routes and be able to include? I worry about the GATE students or the participation of some students not being able to participate in the GATE program because of busing, which you will now have more students from certain part and fewer students from the other part. And how can the teachers manage those students that are unable to participate? That's my concern.
So there are two,
I was going to, because I'll let you address that, and then I know I've got two people, Director Riley and then Director Vadova, so we'll go 1, 2. But if you want to address that, or?
Sure. So here's kind of, we're looking for guidance. We're not taking action, but kind of looking at guidance of the 70 where we are now. Obviously, we'll come back in July where we're at. So we do have 2 options, to your point, that we could do the kind of what was recommended, what we talked about earlier. We also could do the, it's not 1.5, it'd be 2 miles. So we could do, elementary is really taken care of. Once you get to 70, right now they're at 65, so there's some routes we can't run. Once you get to 70, elementary is taken care of. So that's not really a conversation because that's taken care of. We don't have to worry about that. Now the conversation is middle school and high school. So to get to 70, we could do, and correct me if I'm wrong, you two, we could do 2 mile, no transportation zone for secondary. So that's for middle school and high school, and do 2 miles for both of them. And then that we could have, that would free up buses to do GATE. Or we could look at the recommendation here. So not that we're taking a vote, but we'd be looking at some sort of guidance to say if we stay at 70, which way would we lean towards the recommendation, or looking to expand the middle school to a 2 mile zone, which would be a 2 mile no transportation zone, and then would be able to accommodate the GATE transportation for the southern end students. So not right now. I know we have other questions, but I think that's something we'll be looking for guidance at the end.
Thank you for your patience, Director Riley. You've got the floor.
Not providing transportation to GATE is a deal breaker for me. It's already an underutilized program. I don't think our district puts enough of our students in GATE, and with what has been going on, I think it is a mental health issue that those students get their needs met, because we know what happens when that doesn't happen. And as far as when, Katie, you were talking a little bit about where are we going, right? We entered into a contract that was $1 million more. We were looking to reduce that cost. And from what I understood out of our work session was that they could only secure 70 buses and drivers. And so that was the real
Limiting factor.
the limiting factor behind the numbers that are being brought to us tonight is that they're, and that may change. I mean, do we have to have this figured out before July?
What do you mean by figured out? Which
Your
piece of
routes
that?
and your numbers, because you were talking about earlier, you stated that there may be more drivers or busing available by July.
So we're having a conversation with the contractor at the beginning of July to see how many routes that they have, and then we'll take our routing based off that. And so there's kind of 3 conversations in one here, that's kind of wrapped in, and Katie kind of touched on a little bit here. It's, first one is, where are we at to start? Our floor is 70, that we can guarantee that on a daily basis, we can run the 70, and what does that look like? And we can talk about how we want those zones and transportation to look like with the 70. The next conversation is the cap around, how much money do we want to spend on transportation? Do we want to go back to the full 79? And the next conversation is around our choice programs with GATE and Spanish immersion. And I think right here tonight is really just an update of saying, okay, we're at 70 because that's what we know right now. What does our recommendation look like so we can start to do some initial planning? And then I think my understanding is that we'd be looking to do the 79 for this year, and then looking at transportation in conjunction with our whole programming and where we're going in the future of kind of what that looks like throughout the next year, and then moving that into the future. So long-winded to say is tonight's really just looking at the 70 and how we want to configure that. And then we'll come back to you in July to say, okay, here's our final number. And then now here's really what we're going to look like and provide that. What we're trying to do here tonight is have conversations and let families know heading into summer, hey, here's what it's looking like and here are options and here's where we're prioritizing and here's what's next. So it's not a conversation we're having with them in late July or August saying, oh, by the way, here's where we are right now. We're trying to get out in front and have those conversations now.
And specifically for high school, we send out registration, so high schoolers have to register to ride the bus, and we want to make sure we're sending it to the correct students. We don't want to send it to students at 1.5 miles if they're not going to qualify for transportation next year. So we have not done that yet, just waiting for some guidance from the board.
Director Vadova?
Okay, so I have several things. One is, it sounds like we need another work session for the transportation, like, instead of like trying to work it out here. And then also just that the limiting factor is the buses, not necessarily which program, like, it's not that we don't want to provide busing, it's that we can't provide the busing. Like, it's just, they're not there, the buses aren't there, so that's another thing. And then the third thing is, I seem to recall from our work session that we had this software with the special cards, and that was gonna also help us in the long term, like after we get the kids going, we could see like where we could combine routes and actually then be able to provide busing, but we're not gonna know that until we actually start doing the routes and gathering that data.
And, oh, go ahead, Director Petrie.
Actually, I think it was.
Oh, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up?
Thank
Dr.
you.
Corbani?
Yeah, thank you. You said you need some feedback, right? So that helps you
So-
make those decisions at least.
Yeah, specifically for high school zone, because that's who we're asking to register. It would be helpful to have guidance from the board to know who we should be sending that to and how we should be setting up our routes for next year. So usually our team starts working on this in April. So we are a little behind right now just because there's so many decisions to be made. So guidance on the high school zone would be helpful this evening if you're able to.
So correct
So
me
you
if,
do need,
well, I was gonna say, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not really, the 2 is what you're recommending for the high school, and I don't see that initially changing, right?
so would that be,
You're talking about maybe middle school adjustments to 2 as an option, that's what you were
the
talking
secondary
about?
schools include middle school to 2, but she's asking for the high school right now.
The recommendation is already the high school at 2.
No, I
right?
know, so, but that's what you're asking for, because you're saying that we're not making any decisions right now, but she would like to at least have something to send out to the high school students, right? So we're sticking at 2 for the high school students.
That's, I guess,
of the
how I
board.
we're not gonna go higher, and
Yeah.
we're not gonna be able to go lower for the high school. So I think the high school is not really what's in question here, it's the gate programming and the middle school is what I'm hearing.
And that's helpful for our team, correct? Yes.
So should we vote on that and make that solid so they can?
But and the reason why I don't feel like we need to vote on this is we're not changing policy. The goal is to get back to the 79 and to get, this is all just how can we, until the transportation vendor gets up to speed and is able to acquire the buses that they need and the drivers that they need. What do we need to do if we need to do something before the start of the school year? Because, I mean, there is also a chance that they could hit the 79 at the start of the school year, correct? So this could all be, this is kind of contingency planning, if you will. I mean, we have the hope that we're gonna get at the 79 by the start of the school year. If we don't, you're starting to kind of contingency plan, how would this look? What would it look like until we can get to that 79? So to me, what I'm hearing from the board, and we can have a work session, but maybe it would be helpful for, to have a more fleshed out plan from staff, and maybe 2. What would it look like? What are the pros and cons of having middle school go to that 1.5 in order to accommodate the gate? How many students would it impact? Free and reduced lunch, hazardous, whatever that would be. And then on the other side, maybe we just stay at exactly your presentation, your recommendation with the hubs.
I think we have the 2 options right now that would look like. The one is the recommendation right here, and the other one is we do secondary at 2 miles. So both middle schools and high school would be at 2 miles.
Right.
and then that would free up the route, right?
That's
So
what I
those-
said. Right, so those are the two options.
Yeah.
But I think that I would love to see number of students impacted. There's some details in there that I would like to know in terms of who, I just would benefit from knowing that. And then also one part of the conversation really quick, because I know I've been calling on, is we talked a lot about efficiencies. Like talking about maybe having people sign up for transportation instead of just automatically running them in. And we talked a lot, when I went back and looked at that work session, about people using transportation even though they're not needing it. That they sign it up as like for a safety net, even though, but they can get on. Within, at worst case, like a week's notice. Has that been a thought could that get us closer to our goal of transporting everyone that needs a ride, including gate, including these numbers, if we change sign up? Is it too late to do that?
So we tried to push this current school year to see like if parents aren't using it. We did a lot of opting out because of the situation we were in this year.
Right.
And it, other than high school, it does not cut buses in a significant amount. So high school, we already have sign up, and that's where most school districts see a range of kids not using it because they can drive, because their friends can drive. As you get younger, some parents won't sign up because they don't need it every day, but not significant enough to cut full buses.
And I thought it was more of, we were talking about how everyone has seen buses drive by that are, pretty empty, and it's like, so I think we were trying to brainstorm at the last meeting kind of how we can make sure that our buses are filled efficiently, so that we can maximize the fleet that we have, the numbers we only have a certain amount of buses right now, so, okay, so Director Petrie and then Director Vodova.
So I wonder if you can clarify for me the gate transportation. So I am aware that, that right now, gate students who live in the north part of the district are able to just jump on the middle school bus and get to school. But we right now have a 2-mile zone, correct? So that means that some gate students are not able to get on buses who live in the north part of the district and have to find their way there. If we continued that, but did provide busing for the gate students in the south part of the district, would all of them be bused? What is our?
Well, we would do what like the 2 miles. So we'd take a 2-mile radius around Stillwater Middle School, and everybody who lives inside, because we're at the 2 mile right now, so everybody lives inside 2 miles at Stillwater Middle does not get, whether they're at a gate student or they are a Stillwater Middle student.
Okay.
So we would do the same thing here, is draw the 2-mile radius around, and everybody who lives outside 2 miles of that boundary then would get transportation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Director Vodova?
I would like two things. One is I want a clarification of what you want coming out of this meeting, and then I want to actually, I know you don't think it's necessary to vote, but I think we have to give a clear answer to what these people are asking for, like just very specifically, and have the board vote on it so we know, like, at least just like, okay, we're clarifying that the high school students is gonna be 2 miles so they know they can send their letter.
So I don't see the high school improving in this situation, and it can't get worse than this. So I think unless does anyone object to the 2 at the high school? I don't either. So that I think is done.
Answer.
Okay.
But I do, a lot of this is gonna be you continuing to develop and flush out those 2 options, figuring out more creative alternatives, like this hub idea that might be able to bridge that. Also people can listen to hopefully communities listening to this meeting. We would love emails to the school board, superintendent, directly to you, Mark Drummerhausen, on the ideas that we've discussed today. But July, we're gonna know more. And hopefully it's better. Because with every bus we get, it gets acquired, it gets a better situation, a better outlook. But we also the vendor does know we're aspiring to the 79, which is our current policy. Okay. Superintendent Lansfeld.
I just want to say we're very hopeful that we can get there, but we want to We don't want to overpromise and then underdeliver, and we want to be transparent with our community and our families, because last year at this time, school was starting, and we had to share the news that we did not have buses, and it's just a panic and it's a scramble, and that's not fair to families. So we're trying to be proactive with this. We'll continue to problem solve, and again, I'm hopeful that we can get to a better place than where we are now.
Dr. Porbetti?
Thank you. So I'm looking at what we had before. So the 70 routes that we have was 0.5 for elementary, 1.5 for secondary, and that was 70, right?
Yep.
So, but right now there we have 0.5 for elementary, and we have 1 mile for middle school and 2 for the high school. What if we move the middle school to 1.5? Because, I mean, we're still getting some. And remember here, it's 1.5 for both. I'm trying to make sure that for the middle school, because of that some of the kids don't lose out. Because if we push it to 2, obviously we can still get 2, including the GATE programs for the high school, and 1.5 for the middle school. So if we keep the middle school within 1.5, we can still be within the route and still include the GATE students. So I'm just trying to, I mean, you're the experts here, to make sure we don't remove too many middle schoolers.
Go ahead. I think the question that comes down to middle school is, are we considering hazardous roads?
Okay.
That's where you're gonna gain your efficiencies. If you wanna gain buses as though you don't do hazardous roads, then you can look at maybe 2 miles, 1.5 or whatever. If we do take hazardous roads into consideration, from Oakland's standpoint, it doesn't matter if it's 1 mile, 1.5, or 2 miles, theirs stays the same. So I think that's a conversation that we need to have, is where are we at from a middle school perspective on, more specifically, Oakland, in terms of hazardous roads.
Okay.
Director Vadova?
I think we have to take into consideration hazardous roads, because if one child dies because we didn't take into consider hazardous roads, I just don't think it's worth it to then know that we bust all the GATE students. It's not okay. We have to take into I believe we have to take into consideration hazardous roads.
So let's continue to work with our vendor, is what I'm hearing, right? And partner with them the best we can to get to the 79 routes that we need. I think you've heard some feedback and some concerns and some options that maybe you can flesh out, or different ideas that you can pursue. We have an answer on the high school. And then when you hear in July, I'm assuming you'll be reconvening and coming back to the board and the community with an update. And at that point, it'll probably be decision time, depending on how much they can do between now and July. Okay. Are there any further questions? If not, I think we can move on. Great. And again, if the community has heard anything, has preferences for ideas, concerns, thoughts, always feel free to email the school board. And Mark Drummerhausen.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are going to adjourn to a couple closed sessions tonight. The next item on our agenda is a review of pending litigation. In order to consider this litigation, the school board must meet with its attorney in a confidential setting to obtain advice regarding pending litigation. It would be detrimental to the interest of the school district to hold a public discussion with its attorney regarding its legal positions and strategy. The matter to be discussed is Independent School District Number 834, Stillwater Area Public Schools versus Metropolitan Transportation Network, Inc. The specific subjects to be discussed pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.01, Subdivision 3, are the school district's legal positions, defenses, and strategies with respect to the pending litigation pursuant to Minnesota Statutes Section 13D.05, Subdivision 3B, and the attorney-client privilege. And then the second meeting, and pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03B, the governing body of a public employer may, by a majority vote in a public meeting, decide to hold a closed meeting to consider strategy for labor negotiations, including negotiation strategies or developments or discussion and review of labor negotiation proposals conducted pursuant to sections 179A.01 to 179A.25. I will entertain a motion that the meeting now be closed for the purposes stated. Can I get a second? Oh, Director Hager?
Second.
All those in favor? raise your hand and say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll move into closed.
Skip these three. Nope. Is this an old?